I think we're close enough. Let's go ahead and call this meeting to order. Opening prayer, everybody stand please. Mr. Surface, Mr. John Davis.
Father, we just come to you now. Just first of all, we want to thank you so much for the wonderful rain that you sent this past week. We just thank you for that. We give you the praise and the glory for that, and just ask that you would send more our way. Father, we just ask that you give these men wisdom as they lead our community. Give them strength and the courage to be the leaders that we all see that they are, that we might move our town forward, because we ask it in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Focus, you want to make
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, off and running. Now I call to order the regular meeting of the hospital, recreational, solid waste, industrial, and airport authorities. Consider a motion to approve the consent agenda. Everybody make that motion?
I'll make a motion. I'll second.
Trustee Martinez,
Yes.
trustee Toolan,
Yes.
trustee Rudolph,
Yes.
trustee Lowry,
Yes.
and chairman.
Yes, ma'am. Action item A, consider approving the proposed fiscal year 2013 budget beginning July 1, 2013, and ending June 30, 2014. Mr. Hewitt.
Councilor, this is the exact budget that was on our public hearing provided to you last meeting. It just takes an approval, and you'll see this throughout the agendas tonight. And it'll basically propose our budget for 13-14.
All right, this is everything we've already gone over anyway, right? Consider a motion to approve this portion of the budget.
So moved. Sorry.
Trustee Toolan,
Yes.
trustee Rudolph,
Yes.
trustee Lowry,
Yes.
trustee Martinez,
Yes.
and chairman.
Yes, ma'am. Trustee reports regarding these particular authorities. Anybody? City manager's report, Steve?
Two items. Airport Authority just reported to me earlier this afternoon that our Jet A refueler has been delivered. We're currently going through that right now, make sure it's meets all our standards that we expected, and so we are trying to have that in our fleet. And I don't know if you've heard this, but HMA Integris hospital administrator Darcy O'Brien is leaving, and they're currently in the search for another hospital administrator out here. So I just want to pass that along, and I know they're actively looking around Oklahoma and beyond. So that's all I have. I'll add one more. Our solid waste authority, under solid waste as well as also the street department, we are wrapping up the limb pickup around town and continue that, trying to knock that out here in the next week or so. With the recent storm, we are still picking up limbs both in the alley and or in the front. So appreciate that. That's all I have.
All right. I think Darcy's leaving for personal reasons, right? Her husband got a job
Yeah, she's
somewhere else.
got an opportunity out in the west part of the country.
Audience participation regarding these particular authorities? Seeing none, consider a motion to adjourn these authorities.
So moved. Second.
Trustee Toolan,
Yes.
trustee Martinez,
Yes.
trustee Lowry,
Yes.
trustee Rudolph,
Yes.
and chairman.
Yes. Public Works Authority agenda. Now call to order the Public Works Authority. Consider a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved. Second.
Okay.
Trustee Toolan,
Yes.
trustee Lowry,
Yes.
trustee Martinez,
Yes.
trustee Rudolph,
Yes.
and chairman.
Yes. Action item A, consider approving the proposed fiscal year budget, proposed to us a couple times so far. Steve, is this the same as?
Yeah, no, all these items in budget, it's the exact proposed budget that we delivered to you and went through the public hearing 2 weeks ago.
Okay. Consider a motion to approve this portion of the budget.
I make a motion we approve the 2013-2014 budget.
Second.
Trustee Lowry,
Yes.
trustee Martinez,
Yes.
trustee Toolan,
Yes.
trustee Rudolph,
Yes.
and chairman.
Yes. Action item B, present and consider potential new water treatment plant by PEC engineers. Steve.
Council would like to introduce Ethan Edwards, Mike Kaiser, professional engineering consultants. We have tasked them to come up with the cost and feasibility of a plant here locally and alternative heating. Oh, we need to actually,
Oh, click on something.
we minimize this out,
Okay.
and then right there's their proposed, PowerPoint.
All right.
He can run it from,
Oh, okay.
I think he run from there.
They showed me how to do this, I'm gonna take that out. Good evening, Ethan Edwards, PEC, Mike Kaiser, PEC. As Steve, Mr. Hewitt explained, we were tasked to look at a concept study for a new water plant. And that's what we're here to talk about tonight. Oh, no. No. Close your eyes. It's supposed to be one language.
He's trying to help us do it. Don't want to point to it. I didn't tell you
That's it. Here we go, slide 2. You know, all the way to the end, there's only 8 slides, so you probably saw the whole thing before we got back to the beginning. Want to talk a little bit about your existing water portfolio and things that you're working on. We drove out to Clinton Lake today. I can see there's about, I hear you said 30% full, so looks like the rains are helping a little bit, which is great news. But the reason we put zeros there is if the plant's not running, if you're not producing any water, it does have the capacity to treat up to 2.5 million gallons a day, okay? Boss, roughly 0.7 to 2.9, 2.19 million gallons a day. And then, I don't know if you want to talk about this, Mr. Hewitt, Canute, did you have any?
Well, Canute obviously is something we've been working on, so I think we continue to look as an option. And I know that's still on the table as an option proposed for water.
Either treated water or raw water,
Yeah,
correct?
yeah.
So that's why I put Canute, I didn't put whether it was treated water or raw water. It's still a potential source of water, so that's why we're including it in your portfolio. As far as what you need for 2040, and that's roughly a 20-year plus planning period, which is what we would need to look at for securing the loan, through WRB, Water Resources Board, state revolving fund money. That's basically 20 to 25 years of the life of a facility. So we want to look at a 20-plus year planning period. So over the course of the next 20 years, you need roughly 5.5 million gallons a day to meet your demand. Okay, this is just a real brief recap of what we talked about before. Design considerations we looked at, we're assuming 0 from Clinton Water Plant, assuming that the lake is not in a position to use. FOS, you can take up to 2.19 without paying any overage, so we're going to use the maximum from FOS if we can. Canute,
Well,
maximum per, go ahead.
I don't want to interrupt you, but it's not, we're 700,000, overage is above 700,000. So
Oh, it is?
we are, of our 48%, we can get to 2.19.
Okay, sorry. And then Canute, up to a maximum of 1.5 per the MOU. And that gives you a total supply right now, the way that we're looking at this, analyzing this, 3.6 now. What you need is 5.5 roughly, so your deficit is 1.75 million gallons a day. I realize there's a lot of things in flux. Canute's still in the planning stages, okay? FOS, reservoir's kind of low. Water is somewhat difficult to treat, so we're just kind of looking at different things here. Mike, care to jump through? Okay, kind of jumped ahead, your talking points. Your existing water plant, minimal storage, as you can see, run dry every now and then, but it is your cheapest water to treat, so if it's there, we want to use that, okay? FOS, it's expensive to treat, low reservoir level, there's upgrades that are needed, and they've got their engineers did a comprehensive study and outlined some things they need to do for improvement. Canute's still in planning/design. So, what options do we have? Proposed solution. If we looked at all the parameters before, we need roughly 4 million gallons a day through 2040, okay? Now, we can obviously construct in phases, build a 1 million gallon or 2 million gallon a day plant now, plan for future phases while we're doing that, so that we can add on to the plant easily and economically in the future, okay? Supply wells in the Washita River alluvium, that's basically wells that are under the influence of the river. It's an untapped source. It appears to be fairly dependable from research that our hydrogeologists have performed, so. The other benefit of that is it's really close to town, reduces the distribution pricing, conveyance costs for the plant.
And the disposal of the waste, you have your existing sanitary sewer system that you can use, which we would recommend, that would cut down the cost of disposal of waste.
Correct.
Which is one of the bigger cost items, if you remember the cost discussion.
Do you think that would handle the waste 100%?
No. Well, there's some things to look at. If we went RO, we're debating whether we could actually use it for the RO waste. The other waste it could. So it's a trade-off, but it's a hard question right now to answer because we really don't have the parameters specifically on the RO. But we would probably have a lagoon system and discharge into the sanitary sewer system.
After talking with Mr. Brush, it looks like that may be a viable option,
Yeah.
take the RO back to the wastewater plant. We'd obviously have to confirm that, but
And we'd have to engage DEQ because there's loading limits in the creek theoretically.
from the
That we-
wastewater
And
plant.
we would engage DEQ with that discussion immediately. Because if we can take it all back to the plant, perfect. That really reduces.
Take it all back, what?
To the wastewater plant.
Oh.
And blend it with your sanitary sewage.
Okay.
There's still a cost to
Yeah.
convey that waste, but that's the cheapest option by far.
By far.
Okay, reasoning for what we did, obviously, we were tasked a long time ago to expand and diversify our water portfolio. The alluvial is there, it's an untapped source. It'll immediately resolve your supply shortage. It'll minimize the capital cost by phasing in the water plant. It allows you the ability to plan for the future and flexibility for the future and for the unknown. Like I said, we've got Canute that's still in design, we're study phase, and Foss is working on their rehabilitation, so. Don't kill me. Cost breakdowns, 1 million gallon a day water plant, 19.5 million, 2 million, 23.5, 4, 30.5. Now, the water plant itself, is what these costs include, if you look at the bullet right below the 4 million gallon a day cost, it includes your water wells and the alluvial. It includes the piping and the storage to collect and convey that water to the plant. It includes the water plant itself, finished water storage for basically a water tower that you're downstream of the plant, piping to get it there, and then the waste handling, okay? They don't include land acquisition, our fees, financial fees, things like that. Now, I know you're probably wondering, what does the plant actually cost? Okay, the 1 million is roughly 11.5 million just for the plant. I'll have to check my notes here.
Up to 10 million.
Huh?
Up to 10 million.
Oh, it's 10 for the, 10 for the one, 11.5 for the two, and 15.5, rough numbers for the 4 million gallon a day plant. Now, that treatment includes membranes, which is microfiltration, which is your basically things of that nature, reverse osmosis, and ion exchange for nitrates.
So in other words, the 1 million gallon tank's gonna cost 10 million, and the infrastructure for 1 million is gonna cost 9.5.
Roughly, yes.
That's the wells and all of that, yeah.
And probably another 3.5 million on top of that for engineering, land acquisition, and financial.
Land acquisition, I'm not sure.
Well, we may, yeah, that's
We don't know yet.
And survey and geotechnical, and all the things that we would need to do in order to move here. So,
One of the things we talked about, that this potential plan, we did it, you'd recommend it be ready for handle a 4 million gallon plant, but you could potentially begin with 1 million.
Right.
And then as we grow and our needs
Right.
grow, we
You
could.
probably want to look at building the building to house everything you need for the 4 million. All the piping associated with the plant would need to be large enough to put 4 million gallons through it. So you're basically planning ahead. Now, remember, the one, if everything works out the way that it is, the one is still not gonna get you the deficit. You need two.
Well, it really depends.
One will help, but
But you're based on that, we continue to take a large portion from FOS.
that's correct.
And pay those overages, but if we reduce FOS
And if
man,
we get 1.5 out of Canute, if everything works out okay there
or
too.
Clinton Lake Field, we take a look at Clinton Lake. So we
Correct.
have options here now.
Yes, you have options that you didn't have.
That's why we can start with one and build up.
Yeah.
Say,
But you're exactly right. If you build the one, you'd really size everything for the four. So you could then just, I hate to use the word skids, but you would bring in the treatment components to scale up.
Okay, question with the council here is the water quality of the alluvial, there's an abundance amount of water in the alluvial, we know that.
Yes.
Yes,
Does the water quality, is that also affecting this price? Because it's so.
yes.
Yes.
There
It's
is,
essentially phos water.
yeah, if you're comparing this to Canute,
Oh.
Canute is groundwater, okay, it's well water. The alluvial water is what they call groundwater under the influence, so we have to treat it like it's lake water, or surface water. It's different treatment requirements. That's the reason why your plant costs are probably a little bit more than what Canutes are, simply because, per gallon, simply because you have to treat it to higher standards.
You have been irrigating your golf course with the alluvial water. You know what that water is. Very hard, a lot of TDS. It's plentiful. That's the thing. And it is the untapped source left in the state of Oklahoma.
It is the what?
It's the last untapped source of water
In
the
this
state of
area.
Oklahoma, in this area. So alluvial water is going to become more and more used. And so therefore, it behooves you to get allocations of it. It truly does, because that's what's left.
The Washita alluvials, the last untapped source, or?
The alluvials by themselves,
Alluvials in general?
in general, because it's been hard water to treat, expensive water to treat, so therefore it has not been tapped.
How extensive was the hydrogeologist study?
It's been a preliminary brush, but he has a lot of knowledge of the alluvials.
Simply
Obviously,
because there's a lot of irrigation
Right.
wells, and other wells that are registered with the state, that he can go look at the data.
right. Some of the things we would want to do if we pursue this would be actually do some pump tests so we could rate the size of the wells and et cetera. That would determine the number of wells. Based on his judgments right now, we have determined how many wells that are necessary to get this rate. But until we do some test wells, we honestly don't know.
12 for the four,
Yeah.
3 for the one, 6 for the two, and 12 for the four.
Yeah.
Wells.
Now run that by me again.
3 wells for the 1 million, 6 for the two, and 12 for the four.
So when you start talking about acquisition, do you have any idea how much acquisition that would take, like to supply water for 3 wells? See what I'm talking about?
Spacing is probably gonna be on the order of 800 feet to 1,000 feet per well between the wells.
Well, that's an
It'll be an unknown until we pick a location.
Yeah.
What kind of acreage would the city need for a facility?
For the water rights?
Yeah, just for the,
No,
no,
for the
I mean,
land.
a plane, I mean, the size of.
Depends on the waste treatment. If you have to do lagoons or something like that, you're gonna need significantly more. If not, just a few acres.
What about if we did have to do a lagoon?
Did he put it?
10, 20 acres, any idea?
We'll get you, I don't want to quote you a number because depending on how we split the waste up, that's going to drive it. And unfortunately, DEQ is going to have to weigh partially that decision. We can give you the worst case scenario, then we'll shoot us, but we can do that, which probably would be smart. And then we can scale down with that if we can put it into the treatment plant.
We weren't intending to use lagoons, so.
No, no. The other option, of course, is the investigation of a deep well injection, which we would prefer you not go that way because that will drag this project on.
Inexpensive.
And expensive. We would prefer you not pursue that.
Yeah,
Until somebody else does it.
so what you're saying, it would be an advantage if we did this to do something close to our community
Yes.
and probably both close to Foss and the Clinton Lake lines and close to
Sewer
sewer
system.
and sewer system.
Sewer
So
system would
The
be,
sewer system's more critical than the
Yeah.
aspect of it.
it's cheaper to lay a water line than sewer line.
Would you blend our other waters with this plant? I mean,
Yes. You could do all of the above. We want to investigate that, but ideally, if you could take it back to where everything comes together and give the operators the choice of the blending mechanism, we had that. But if you did that, that would be the ideal. So siting of the plant would be somewhat critical.
I was
Not
thinking-
absolutely.
Right in here, in this bend,
if you got the bend of the river, that's normally that area has more water to it. So
Anywhere there's a bend.
anywhere there's a
It's
bend,
back in the river.
obviously, that would be a
Out
good
west,
shot, that
out
would be a
west
good
where our
area.
lines come in, would that be, there's some bend out by the, I'm just curious.
Maybe,
Yeah, we would get Jim to give us some ideas of where decided to get back with you guys and maybe see what is most reasonable.
I switched the slide on you. I want to get it all covered, we can definitely go back to questions, but the schedule looks like this. And I want to preface everything by stating that DEQ is going to have a lot of weighing in on the schedule of the project. What I mean by that is, if we do everything within their regulations, and we don't try to do something fancy like an injection mold that they have no experience with, this will go much faster. If we try to do something that's not approvable by them, and we have to show them that it'll work, you could add a year to 2 to 3 years to a project. So, the waste handling thing is the only thing that concerns me at all. And
Right.
Jeremy made me feel a little bit better today, but that's typically where we have a setback. Because most of the time, the water plants are outside of the city, and you've got to do something. And the only thing that DEQ lets you do is lagoon without having what they call a variance.
We, as you know, we have opened the door to get DEQ to help us. And I think we need to take advantage of that. If council so deems that that would be one of the first things we do is to go sit down with them with the conceptual plan of the processes and see which creates heartburn with them. And then we decide, because we don't want to waste time submitting something that they are not going to approve or drag their feet with. We haven't got time to do that. I don't see it except for waste handling. And that's a decision that we have to have to weigh in.
What about the waste handling concerns you?
Well, RO has a significant volume of waste.
Yeah.
And it's very concentrated waste. And sending that to the wastewater plant, you have to look at everything they're putting into the plant goes out of the plant. So we have to make sure that we're not impairing the water that your wastewater plant's discharging into.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Are you looking at another technology besides RO, did you say?
It depends on the water chemistry. If we've got nitrates in there.
Well, right now,
Yes.
it's RO, ion exchange for nitrates, if
Right.
you come back with nitrates in the water, and membranes, which is just for filtration.
All three of those used, or?
Yes, all three of those are approved by DEQ. That's-
Oh, approvable technologies.
Yes.
Is that like one well, or one treatment plant uses all three of those
All three of those,
technologies?
yes.
Oh, okay.
Haven't we just here recently done some tests on some of the waters in the wells and some wells out west, and we know kind of what?
Yeah, they have that information.
And we base this off of those wells.
Okay.
Okay?
The one up north they mentioned, we tested, which is a great volume well, a
Was that
golf
on
course.
Haggard Road?
Went out west by Haggard Road, and we
Okay.
talked about, we have the quality, I mean, and that, I mentioned that, just, I knew, the quality is horrendous. But this is what it takes to clean that water.
Put it there.
The abundance of-
But we've already analyzed that one.
Yes. they
Yeah,
have
you have, it depends on where it's sited and what we feel that you need, but you're gonna, the one thing we don't know is when we pick the site where we're gonna put the wells, we definitely need to probably find out what the rate is, how much we can really get out of it.
You need to do a test.
And then you need to test it, because DEQ is gonna require you to test that well, even though we're gonna treat it. Because there may be something, I've done a couple up in Bristow that I've got some radionuclides coming out of it that I would have never expected. I mean, there's stuff in the ground today that you've never seen before, so who knows?
But before we go test wells, we need, there's a lot of things we need to do first. We
Yes,
need to-
that's exactly right. I wouldn't argue that. The discussion with,
Agreement first.
Oh, sure.
yeah,
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
Council, we have a tremendous amount of discussion that needs to take place prior to letting them go test wells, and let them,
That's right.
what, location, landowners, agreements. We have to come up with a financial plan, what would this cost, how would we pay for it? $20 million is a large sum of money.
But I'd like, one thing that I would like to see, and I'm not trying to be picky, maybe I am trying to be picky. You had $19.5 million, I'd like to see, instead of the plan's gonna cost $10 billion, I'd like to see a breakdown of how the together 9.5
I can send that to
line
Mr.
item
Hewitt.
breakdown.
We just didn't want to get to that details. We have that, we can send that to it. So that's.
They're very preliminary, and they're going to stay that way until we get water quality data.
Yeah.
But we're trying to be conservative, so that
Yeah.
we don't come back and say, well, instead of, 20 months, it's gonna be 28 million.
But we've got some water quality data.
Yes.
We do, but it's not from the location that we need it from. I mean, water can vary from, 20 feet over, from 200 feet over, so while it appears to be the same, then, wait, it can.
Well, Don, you realize, probably won't, the DEQ would require us to do those tests even if it's 20 or 30 feet away. And that's what, it's just the cost we're gonna have to run into deal with. I think that's what they're mentioning. I mean, we're seeing that in other areas.
Well, in
Yeah, but
my
we would-
opinion, as a practical matter, it's not going to change.
It shouldn't, I would
It
agree, it
shouldn't.
shouldn't change drastically in the alluvial, and you don't need to test that many, but I would think you want to test where it is, you need to get a volume, you need to determine a pumping rate on one of those wells.
DEQ really, when we met with Canute engineers in DEQ, that's the one thing they hammered on, SKW and Fossbach, or not Foss, but Canute. They want to know that there's enough water to sustain
Right.
for however long they're going to be. I mean, they hammered on them for that, and they didn't want to do anything until they could prove that. They don't want anyone, they're looking out for everybody, they don't want anyone to go into
If
debt
they're
for
gonna loan
something
you
that's not
$20
going to be
million,
sustained.
they want to make sure there's water.
Well, I understand that, but I'd still like to see a breakdown.
He's basically just saying for the cost breakdown, the numbers.
Sure, I can send that to Mr. Hewitt, I've got that
Yeah,
right
the
here.
that you're gonna be able to provide should be somewhat in the ballpark.
Yes, it's in the
Right.
ballpark.
Yeah. Because you do have some test data from wells in the Washita alluvial.
And we
as
based
speak.
our processes off
Yeah.
that data. Right, absolutely correct.
So these numbers, like the 19, 23, and 30 million, those numbers are specific to Clinton?
Yes.
Yeah, we gotta get a big time breakdown on that. That's a lot of money.
Does your,
Like I said, I've got it, I can send it to Steve.
Okay.
does your report so far have any costs as far as operation and maintenance? I mean, it seems like
That's one thing that's not in there. These
not only
are
do we
capital
pay
costs.
for the plant and the operation, it's like it'd be twice as expensive.
Well, these are capital costs, these are what this is money necessary to borrow to do that. Now, operational costs, we have to look into.
Right, but Ethan, would you not say that, your latest plan, your RO plan with Coeta, you have a pretty good idea of what's.
That's on exchange.
Okay, so, but you can have a ballpark
We
for
can
us,
give, oh, sure.
even for operate O&M costs, so we would have an idea of annually what we would be looking there.
Yeah.
Maybe Brian's already done that one, Brian Shears.
Yeah. If not, we have plants in Kansas. So we can put that together.
Would that be on wells also?
Yeah.
Because I think, I'd like to see just information on what the cost is to run the wells, like, to start with.
Just power costs?
That's predominantly the well.
Right.
This is power costs.
Yeah. But wells aren't cheap to drill, especially a municipal well. Completely different than.
Depending on irrigation.
Completely different.
So you all designed and built plants similar to this?
Yes.
Coeta,
Hutchinson has a Beckland.
We're working on Enid, but Enid, we're doing disinfection on raw water.
how big is the one in Coeta?
It's peak at 6.
Six.
It runs 4.
4.5.
Yeah.
What was their cost? At a Ford?
It was almost $5 a gallon.
Yeah. Right now, plants are coming in, if you really want to write a number down, it's hard to, between $4.50 and $5 a gallon.
That's capital cost.
Capital
Make sure you
cost.
understand that, that's
Capital
capital
cost.
cost you're talking about, you're not talking,
No, that's
what's it
capital
gonna cost
cost
the
to
citizens
build
or anything like
plant.
that, so understand, that's the
Wait.
capital cost, yeah.
If you just use 5 because you can mentally do it, you're going to be probably high, but not that high. And you can ask OWRP too, because they have better numbers last time I asked, and those numbers were pretty close to where.
The smaller plant you go, the more it costs per gallon.
Right.
Because you're putting in all the infrastructure.
Right, that's why that 1 million gallon plant seems expensive compared to the 2 million.
Or the 4, yeah.
Yeah, that's why.
So Coeta was able to produce 4 to 6 million gallons a day?
They didn't have
Instead of
wells.
20 million bucks?
They didn't have wells, okay? They got water out of the river,
Oh, okay.
okay?
River water.
So they already had that, and they had some of the components at the plant already there. They had the disinfection and the clear well already built in phase one.
Didn't have any storage requirements, any
Right.
piping upgrades, none of that.
Is
So
the
it-
water East Oklahoma better quality than water in West Oklahoma?
Not the verdigris.
Oh, really?
Different issues.
Different
Right.
issues.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Still
verdigris
difficult
is
water.
very difficult to treat. Yeah. Broken Arrow built it upstream, and it was $60 million for their plant.
How many gallons a day was that?
15, it was right at $4 a gallon.
Yeah, theirs is $4 a gallon.
$20 a gallon. $20
Well,
a.
No, you're looking at
Yeah.
10 for the plant.
The plant.
For the plant.
Right.
Plant ain't giving up bucks.
And the
And
well.
storage.
Yeah.
And storage.
Right.
I wish it was as simple as just building the plant out there, but there's so many other things you have to have with the treatment process. It adds up.
Hey, so on these timelines here, are you relying on any technologies and processes that ODEQ has not approved in the past?
We're assuming that we have the processes that they will approve. We aren't going out of the box that they're comfortable with. And I don't think we need to.
They told Canute that they would not require the pilot to run a pilot test on an ROV,
Yeah.
which was, but blew my mind that they didn't require that.
But by the same token, they didn't accept one of the variances. You're aware of that?
Yeah,
On
that
the
was-
evaporator. So you never know until you get the letter. But
But you're assuming that in this time frame that there will not be piloting, right?
There'll be minimal piloting.
You still.
we would
Not for our, well, maybe for our, they may want to see what's in the waste.
yeah, we would want to do it for
Before
actual
they let us
sizing.
taste the wastewater.
Yeah, we would want to do some testing with the manufacturers to essentially design it correctly and make sure the capacity is right.
And also in here is not the time it takes for us to obtain water rights or agreements.
Permits and
Correct.
land and everything else that you need.
Now, you have part of the city over the alluvial as it stands.
Mhm.
We've investigated that. So you do have some
Big
water,
water.
you have some water rights. That needs to be balanced into this whole thing. Yeah.
You haven't seen like this now.
No, I don't think you have enough. Did they? I didn't think they did. But,
I don't know.
Are you pretty comfortable with the 24 to 31 month timeline?
Yes. As long as we don't upset the apple cart with DEQ, yes. The process seems to be easier than the borrowing state money. The process seems to go much smoother.
yes,
There-
you don't want to get private money.
It's a different set of engineers that work on the water resources board side, the state revolving fund side. They're much more agreeable,
That is a true statement.
easier to work with.
We had that meeting with the Patty Thompson. I mean, it was like, yeah, we definitely want to work with that.
What would the life of this plant be?
You may be able to get a loan for 25 years, 20 is standard.
So the life of the plant, I think, would be 20 years also.
Your membranes, you probably, yeah, your membranes, like a lot of other things, probably have a life expectancy of 7 to 10 years. The physical components of the membranes may have to be changed out. That's one of the reasons we would evaluate that with the manufacturers. The other components is
Well, that
just.
goes into your operation.
Yes, that goes in the operating cost, as you asked. But the physical plant itself is good for 25 to 30 years easy. We would build it for that.
So say we built the 1 million gallon a day facility, and then went for 19.5, and then we wanted to up it to 2, but then it just cost us $4 million to up it to 2. See what I'm saying? Like the 1 million gallons, 19.5, 2 million gallons, 23.5.
It'd probably be a little bit more than that because you're going to pay for contractor,
Yeah, people come back
costs,
down again, yeah.
mobilization, bonding, you can pay for all of that.
Okay.
Again,
Well, every year you wait, you increase
and
costs.
escalation, price escalation every year.
I could ask questions on that.
I mean, this is the time to ask it.
The one thing that concerns me about the one is when you're talking to the Water Resources Board about what you need for your planning period, the one isn't gonna get you your 5.44 million gallons a day that you need for 20 years. that may be an issue with them. Especially with these other things. in
Right, I was
flux,
gonna say, the
fossil flux,
uncertainty with the other
flux.
two, you need, before you go there and ask for this, you need to have those decisions made.
What
We
decisions?
need to get buy-in
Cost.
from them.
FOS, what you're really gonna take from FOS, that you're guaranteed to do, and Canute. You need to know how much you're gonna take from Canute, one way or the other, because that has to be part of the discussion, to size what you need here.
You don't want to go to something, you need the same place and everything.
Right.
Right.
So,
Well, that's something we're gonna have to discuss.
Right, yeah, that's a long way away.
There's been lots of internal discussion.
Okay, all right. I got one more. So say we have to save 1 million gallon a day facility, right? And then we decide we want to up it to 2. What's the timeline on that to change it from 1 to 2? Is that too speculative?
No, but you're gonna have to go back through DEQ, you're gonna have to do.
go back through the permitting
This
process.
is the permitting process again. The,
It probably would be much faster than what that is, honestly,
Really?
really.
That's
The construction may be shorter,
yes,
but the engineering may be quicker too. But
Yeah, it should be.
I would say you knock 6 months off of that.
That's not much. Something to consider.
Trying to clarify something I've been thinking. You said that the plant has 3 different types of filtration systems. Is that?
Three
is that
different
true?
types of treatment.
3 different types of treatment.
Correct.
And you, and this preliminary assessment is, these 3 different types of treatment are what we need at a minimum to treat the water that we have already got test samples from the Washita alluvial.
That treatment concept is based on actual data from wells that.
right. The alluvial wells that we have access to chemistry to, those 3 processes were selected as the best process to treat that water.
My point being, we couldn't leave out one of those treatment processes and possibly make the water, still treat the water and make the cost come down a little bit.
See, you're talking, so a lesser degree quality of water.
Well, I'm talking about a lesser complicated plant.
The only one, and I don't know, would be. the
Ion exchange may go away.
May go away if
Nitrates.
we don't have nitrates. And we don't know.
Well,
It-
test you ran, did it show nitrates?
I believe so.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's why we put it in.
Hey, Jeremy? Yes. Those tests we ran out west and north, can you remember any of that quality?
I mean, the TDS and stuff was around 1,700, and I mean, we needed that back around to 200. There was radionuclides found in some of those wells, and then also nitrates in some. I mean, it was hit or miss. Some very greatly from one end of, from what we found just north of town all the way out there by Haggard Road. Those were greatly different from each other, but the ones they transitioned as you went that way. The water quality seemed to be worse here directly north of town than it did back west.
I guess I'd ask the question then, this, by having all 3, to kind of piggyback off what Councilman Hewlin's asking is, I mean, we could leave one out if nitrates were low, but, I mean, what would that cost save us? Or what would happen in the future if we had to add
It's
nitrates?
gonna save you about $1 million, if I remember. No, I'm sorry, 225,000.
That's pretty cheap, and for the
That's all-
insurance,
that's
once
all
you
I
start
heard.
pumping that water, you don't know where you're gonna pump it from, you don't know what characteristics you're gonna get.
This would get us the best quality water anywhere around.
Yes.
You're treating it to primary standard, which you have to, plus your secondary standards for harvest and everything.
Right.
You're not gonna have the,
So
Now, remember, you're gonna take that water and you're gonna more than likely blend it with your other water. Okay?
It's very hard.
With what's in your system, that's correct. And that trend is becoming more and more, you over-treat one and you blend it with the water. It's not as good, so that your average quality. So it will be better than what you've got now for sure out of FOS, no question about that. Because you're gonna cut it in half, probably what you get with FOS. The lake water is good, that will help. So your overall water quality will be better, but it depends on how you blend it and what the volumes are. Like, if you've got the lake water, we told before, you may not want to run this plant, except just to keep it wet, keep it running, but don't produce it, and cut your costs back, use the lake water.
or run that and cut back all the
Right.
steak from FOS. I mean, there's all kinds of.
This
options.
plant gives you the flexibility to do that, okay? You can't really turn it off, but you can ramp it way, way down, okay? And that's one of its advantages. So, obviously, I tell you to use the lake water out of the lake, make sure that plant's operational, use that first. And then if since you're in bed with FOSS, you have to use that, and then make up the difference with this plant. That's, if you have some strategy, that's what I would suggest. And then Canute comes in, use Canute to augment the plant. But obviously, we need, I hate to use Steve and keep saying his portfolio effect, but you need a portfolio effect of water. The alluvial, as you grow with it, has the ability to replace all of it. That's why the alluvial is the ultimate decision. Just expensive water to treat. But ain't gonna be less expensive to treat than FOSS. Or more expensive than FOSS, it's gonna be, and it's local.
Are there any municipalities that use alluvial water for drinking water?
There's several in the state that already do. I can't name offhand, but you're seeing more and more people investigating the alluvial waters. But basically, anybody that's got a radial well, Kansas City, Kansas uses water right off the river in the Kansas River. And they just drill a well right next to the river. And it's the same concept that we're doing here, except that water's a little better quality than what you've got here.
Washita alluvial water is very comparable to FOSS water.
Yeah, that's where it comes from.
That cost doesn't include the engineering cost. Do you have a rough estimate?
Depends on which plant we do. That's what we don't know. It will vary between 1 or 2 or 4, depending on which options we choose.
That's the same we did it too.
What kind of percentage are you getting from the final numbers of WEDA?
We 8.5%.
Exactly, would that be comparable to ours, 8.5%?
That's what our fee was.
Would that be comparable to what?
I don't know how much it costs to close the note from the bond. That's a pretty good sized chunk. What was embarrassing is the loan cost to close the note on the note for WEDA was more than the engineering fee. Not that that sticks in my craw, but it does.
How do they pay for it? How did we pay for it?
They did private finance.
They went private financing. They extended the note out to 40 years.
Did they pay for it through, how do you know how the citizens paid for it?
Water rates. Now, that strategy is good if you want to extend and backload your note.
Yeah.
Coweta was growing. The mistake we made, we should have bought it through OWRB.
Refinance?
Yes, sir.
Refinance.
You got it. Just because it would save about 1.5 years off the whole process. I know that doesn't make sense, but it's reality. Trust us.
Quita had some unique situations. They didn't have a whole lot of land, so we had to be very creative with the waste handling.
Oh, yeah.
That's what it was.
Oh, yeah.
And you're looking specifically at 2 methods of waste disposal with us. One's our existing sewer system and the other is lagoons.
Right.
Most likely.
And until we get a finding from DEQ, we're going to base our costs on lagoons.
Actually, the costs are the most conservative waste disposal right now.
Well, that's true. Yeah.
So there's a tremendous amount of things we don't know until we sit down at the table.
All right, that's why we didn't want to hand out the itemized costs, because some of these things are still in flux. I can give you the costs that I'm comfortable with, but the waste handling, we don't know what that's going to cost yet.
All right. Yeah, okay. Anything else? All right. I guess we'll move on.
Appreciate it.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Where are we going now? Where are we going? This?
Yes.
Yeah. All right, action item C, discuss and consider potential refinancing of public works authority loan. Likewise,
Council, OWRB is refinancing all their debt, has the savings on it, the city's at 30%. pretty light, but we'll take what we can get, I guess. Give us I put this letter in there that they provided, and they offered a couple different options. You know, typically, we would be an opportunity to pay this off, because you can hear some of the capital costs run into. We have unknowns, run into some issues with our funding, trying to keep up with the overall cost. What we suggest and recommend is that we go ahead and continue our payments that we've expected and budgeted for, and then save the money as in timing, and take that savings. We think that's the best qualified direction to go, rather than pay it off, because we obviously are going to need some capital cash. If we talk about land acquisition, we talk about capital costs and some water line, the canoe, there's a tremendous amount of other things. We're going to need the cash available, so we recommend that basically we take the option to pay the same payments. It'll pay off the loan earlier, and new final maturity will be subject to that amount in savings, and we would recommend that direction.
Comments? Questions?
You surely not take what we need.
Yeah.
Plan the same, to cut the time down. No brainer. I move we do that.
I'll second that motion.
Trustee Rudolph.
Yes.
Trustee Lowry.
Yes.
Trustee Martinez.
Yes.
Trustee Hulen.
Yes.
And Chairman.
Yes. Action item D, request authorization to proceed with wastewater treatment plant clarifier rehab. Mr. Wood.
Council is Stephen Jones and Jeremy Brush come up. Basically, you know we're working on one clarifier. We're going to ask to go to bid, and we have budget for another clarifier that we are required to rehab. These gentlemen have some options that could extend the life of these clarifiers within every 5 years. They brought this to me. I told them it looks like a very credible plan. I want them to present that to you so we can look at it and decide which direction we'd like to go. Jeremy?
All right, what we ran into is we had two of the older clarifiers, which are concrete basins at the wastewater plant. It's a key part of the treatment process that we have to have. Two of them were built in 1978 with the original plant. During that time frame, they were only sandblasted and recoated twice, between 2013 and 1978. They should have been coated every 3 to 5 years. And what happened was the steel wound up just basically deteriorating to the point it was falling apart. So we wrenched around and we rebid the original bid to go in and replace all the steel in there, and they bid that just to repaint that steel. So we had to do the same process in 5 years from now roughly, and sandblast and repaint all that, which costs about $70,000 per clarifier. What we've run into is another product out there made by Belzona. It's a 2-part epoxy, and they're warranting that product for 15 years, which would actually cut back on the labor and the sandblasting over the life of the clarifier, saving roughly close to $210,000 per clarifier in labor and sandblasting cost. The Belzona material comes out, there are about 3 different options just to do some cost comparisons. The option 1 is just basically where we're at right now. We rehab it just like we had the original bid at $188,000. Then we'd have an additional $70,000 over 5 years to maintain that, coming out to $468,300 over 15 years for the maintenance on that particular clarifier. Going with the Belzona, we would just right off the top, BW Services actually had the original bid, said they would knock off $11,000, which is their cost that they had in the original bid to paint the clarifier, which drops down that cost to $177,000. And the first option is a turnkey, to have a contractor come in and coat that clarifier with the Belzona. They purchase the material, everything, at $80,000 per clarifier. It's a huge capital cost, but once again, it does save money as opposed to regular sandblasting and painting every 5 years. And then the third option that we ran into, saving the $10,000 or $11,000 per clarifier just off the top using the Belzona, and then y'all hiring a contractor just to do it ourselves aside from, and then also buying a bulk unit of the Belzona material. The bulk unit would be enough to coat all 3 clarifiers at the facility, coming in at $37,000, and then also a cost to apply that at $39,000 per clarifier. The cost comes in higher but at the same time, you don't have enough material to do all three up front. There's a long storage life on the material, it's a two-part epoxy, so it doesn't necessarily go bad. If we waited 5 years to do all three of them, we would still have the same material to do the third one at the end of 5 years. Down here at the actual savings, just looking at option 2, per clarifier over a 15-year period, you'd save $210,000. And then going down here using option 1, or using option 3 versus option 1, you're saving $232,000 per clarifier. And just a quick breakdown as far as it's $21,000 to actually buy the material that y'all sells versus having a contractor buy the material.
So you're saying that we need to go?
I recommend it highly. I mean, that's real easy money to save over a 15-year period.
Yeah, there's two parts of it. I mean, you know, we really can't go the other option without doing a full bid, as you know, due to state requirements, statutorily how we would bid it. So us purchasing, you know, the bulk material, we've got pricing on that.
Yes.
Belzona pricing. And then Scorpion Energy being the best price, we went out and got prices and quotes to do the application. So there's actually two things there. That saves us all the money and extends the life of the clarifiers. Rather than, if we go have a turnkey, then we have to rebid the entire process. We have to submit it out there, we have to take bids. This actually, we save money by buying material, and then we've already got a quote on applying it.
We already have a contractor that is doing the sandblasting and the, whatever the rehab work, and then we're going to bid out for a contractor to do the application procedure for the Belzona, but we would buy the Belzona and we provide that
We've
material.
actually we've got the bid prices already for the contractor, which is
Yes.
the Scorpion Energy, which is at $39,999. They are the best price that can.
We received 4 different bids, and they range from around $56,000 all the way up to $39,000 for the application.
Sounds really cost effective, and I would assume that two-part epoxy, if you coat those
Yeah.
pipes, it really would prevent a lot of the deteoration that.
Yeah, the
you see over
contractor
time.
himself actually warranted it for 15 years for the material and his workmanship.
See, if we could do that 39.
Yeah, we can do the 39, and you can also do the 37,000 purchase the Belzona, which we've got pricing on. But there's two different items there, and it's in your authority to do that. I need to bring it to you, which we're doing that. But you don't need a hard bid if we've got a price in front of us.
And our long-term plan is to do all 3 of those.
Right.
In the future, the other
Sure.
2.
We have one we're working on right now. It'll be done this summer. Then we try in the budget. We have another one we're required to do this next year. And then we'll probably turn around in another year or a year and a half, we'll do the third, which is the larger one. We'll do it as well.
It won't be as extensive on the third one. There's some surface deterioration, but I believe it won't be near as extensive as these first 2.
So after this 15 years, this coating, can it be just touched up at that
Yes.
point? You know, there wouldn't be for a full need for the full sandblasting and rehab of everything, maybe the parts that have deteriorated with chipping or what, I'm not familiar with it.
Yeah, basically what the Belzona says that they expect it to last 20, 25 years. They don't, it's not necessarily just gonna dissolve in the water. I mean, that material, once it's on there, as long as it bonds to the steel, you'll know within the first couple of years if it's gonna let loose or not.
Yeah.
If it doesn't let loose in the first couple of years, you can expect it's actually going to wear itself down through abrasion before that stuff lets loose. So it could last 20, 25 years, even more, if properly maintained.
That's a great investment.
Yeah.
I think it's a good deal, yeah.
So actually, what you need is a motion to spend $39,999.7 on the work, on the clarifier, and then a second motion to spend $37.7 on the Belzona.
Correct.
Has Belzona been around 25 years?
Oh, yes, they've been around, I believe, since the 1940s. This is not a new process. They've been making this material here for water and wastewater plants. It's been sold for many years here in Oklahoma, surrounding area.
Well, I make a motion
It's gonna outside the box.
I make a motion that we authorize our manager to hire this company for $39,997 to apply. That was on.
I'll second that.
Trustee Rudolph.
Yes.
Trustee Human.
Yes.
Trustee Lowry.
Yes.
Trustee Martinez.
Yes.
And Chairman.
Yes, do we need another?
We need to purchase, so I'll make a motion that we give Steve the authority to purchase the bulk Belzona at the cost of $37,700.
I'll second.
Trustee Human.
Yes.
Trustee Martinez.
Yes.
Trustee Lowry.
Yes.
Trustee Rudolph.
Yes.
And Chairman.
Yes. Trustee reports. Oh, I'm sorry, what?
I'd like to, we've added the
Oh,
executive session for Public Works. I think would be appropriate now to discuss purchase of critical road property.
okay. Consider a motion to go into executive session to discuss the purchase of or appraisal of real property.
That's a move.
Second.
Trustee Lowry.
Yes.
Trustee Martinez.
Yes.
Trustee Rudolph.
Yes.
Trustee Human.
Yes.
And Chairman.
Yes, do we need to invite somebody?
Yeah, yeah.
Steve,
It's gonna
Should
happen.
have done it in the motion.
consider a motion to invite Steve to our executive session.
Also moved.
Second.
Sorry.
Trustee Rudolph.
Yes.
Trustee Martinez.
Yes.
Trustee Lowry.
Yes.
Trustee Human.
Yes.
And Chairman.
Yes. All right, we'll now consider a motion to come out of executive session.
I'll make a motion, we return to the regular session of the Clinton City Council. Public Works Authority.
I'll second.
Trustee Human.
Yes.
Trustee Rudolph.
Yes.
Trustee Lowry.
Yes.
Trustee Martinez.
Yes.
And Chairman.
Yes, no action was taken during the executive session. Trustee reports regarding this particular authority.
Steve, I've got a couple of questions. Have we provided sewer to the TAS and right services as of right now? Have we?
Supposed to be done today or tomorrow?
Today or tomorrow, yeah. I went up there yesterday and they were working around a water line, but not last section of it.
And I was noticing something too the last couple of weeks. What, the water running down Glen Smith seems to come, are we still doing some flushing?
We still have to flush to deal with the high iron buildup. So we have an automatic flusher in that area, so periodically it does come in, so you'll see water running down there. It's part of our flushing program to maintain those lines from building up that orange sediment water.
Okay. Do we know how, we authorized the expenditure for some type of an icing?
Ice glacier.
Ice picking.
Ice picking, and it is a program that we're gonna try here in this next budget, as well as we just got our plans back from the engineer to send off for the phosphate injection. We sent those to DEQ, we're waiting for DEQ to permit that, so we get that, we're gonna install phosphate at our pump stations. That'll also be now be in our system. That'll also help reduce some of that redness as well.
Okay. Thank you.
And that'll start July, or?
Phosphate will start as soon as, the DEQ is back with us. He's setting up time right now with ice picking based on the approval budget, and yes, it's our goal to have that done this July, August.
So we haven't done anything different at all?
Just flush.
Just flushing?
Continue to flush.
All right.
That's the only thing, that is the only thing we can do at this point to eliminate or at least reduce that until we add phosphate or the ice picking.
Well, it's been working this past 2 weeks. Water's starting to come out.
Well, one thing that helps, and I think, and I can use Jeremy and Stephen here, but as more water's flowing through there, it's moving, it helps, but that's why the flushing's important. When you don't use much water, then it kind of sets there, and then that begins to flake, and then it ends, dead ends, corrects, and then that's where it begins to build up, so those houses affected on a dead end line, they turn that tap on, they may have a darker red look to their tinted water than other folks. More people are using water, that reduces the parts per million, spreads it out, so you don't see it as much. It's maybe in the water, it's just spread out.
All right. I think it's hotter.
Yeah, it usage goes up during the summertime, obviously.
All right, any other trustee reports here? Seeing none, city manager report.
Nothing extra.
All right, audience participation regarding the Public Works Authority. Seeing none, consider a motion to adjourn the Public Works Authority.
I move that we adjourn the public works.
I second that.
Trustee Hulen?
Yes.
Trustee Lowry?
Yes.
Trustee Rudolph?
Yes.
Trustee Martinez?
Yes.
And Chairman?
Yes, on to the Clinton City Council. The regular meeting of the Clinton City Council, consider a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Councilman Hulen?
Yes.
Councilman Lowry?
Yes.
Councilman Martinez?
Yes.
Councilman Rudolph?
Yes.
And Mayor?
Yes, action item A, consider appointment to planning and zoning board, Steve.
Council, we have no additional folks come to us at City Hall. We're going to make sure to put this on there. If you had anybody you'd like to place on this,
Let's try to get something put to paper. And anyone interested in planning and zoning board,
Yeah.
call City Hall, fill out an application.
we'll do that. Well, and we'll actually fix that. Okay.
Action item B, consider renewal of agreement with Multi-County Youth Services, Steve.
Council, this is your same agreement you've approved past many years. They do a great service for us. This is their service agreement. This is what they'll provide, their scope of services. And you've already agreed in their budget to help fund their activities.
How much was that amount?
$20,000.
That was in the budget.
Correct.
And this is just the same agreement we do every year. Consider a motion to renew our agreement with Multi-County Youth Services.
So moved.
Move we renew the agreement with Multnomah County.
Second.
Councilman Rudolph?
Yes.
Councilman Hulen?
Yes.
Councilman Lowry?
Yes.
Councilman Martinez?
Yes.
And Mayor?
Yes. Consider and adopt resolution 818 approving the budget for the fiscal year 2013-2014, Steve.
Council, you've approved budget in all areas except for now, City Council. And this resolution covers all authorities as well as the City of Clinton. It's your annual resolution it's a budget for next year.
Fine, good. Consider.
I'll make a motion, we approve or adopt resolution number 818.
I second.
Councilman Lowry?
Yes.
Councilman Hulen?
Yes.
Councilman Rudolph?
Yes.
Councilman Martinez?
Yes.
And Mayor?
Yes, ma'am. Action item D, consider disposition of surplus property not sold at our May 21 auction, Steve.
Council, we had property 503 North 16th and property at 224 Second and 209 Hayes. These properties were not bid on. We have had some, gentleman Victor Martin has provided us a bid of $100 on 224 South and 209 Hayes. And also we'd like to bid $100 on the 503 North 16th for lots 27 and 28, Block 3. Mr. Martin, he's right there. Now this is under the valued amount. I believe it's $3,000 in the charter. So we do not need to go back to the bid portion of it. So you can sell it if you believe the $100 for the properties is a fair price.
We didn't have a bid on it.
Yeah.
Well, and we just continue to mow it, so staff doesn't have any issue with that.
I move we accept that.
Second.
Second.
Councilman Rudolph?
Yes.
Councilman Martinez?
Yes.
Councilman Lowry?
Yes.
Councilman Hulen?
Yes.
And Mayor?
Yes, congratulations. All right.
Thank you. Now I'm over. Put something on.
Council reports. Seeing none, city manager's report.
I have nothing more.
Audience participation. Consider a motion to adjourn the June 18 meeting of the Clinton City Council.
So moved. Second.
Councilman Hulen?
Yes.
Councilman Martinez?
Yes.
Councilman Lowry?
Yes.
Councilman Rudolph?
Yes.
And Mayor?